Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is in OCIA and will be received into the church in a few weeks here at the Easter Vigil. This is Leslie Owiti. Welcome to the program, Leslie.
Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate it.
So, I don't know how long the journey has been, but why don't you take us to the beginning? How did faith start in your family?
Yeah, man, it's a wild story for me. So I guess I'll start all the way at the beginning. I was born in Kenya to a single mom. She was not married to my dad. She was still in college, taking her classes about second year. There was this ministry that was reaching out to people, which is the church that she ended up joining. It's called International Churches of Christ. I think a lot of people have heard of Church of Christ. So this is like an offshoot of that came from that. Well, yeah, during the time she was not interested, and something that I learned later is she grew up Anglican. I had no idea, you know. But yeah, she was not interested. She was more interested in partying and, hanging out, yeah, normal things that kids do in college. And then when she got pregnant with my brother with the same dad, now my dad was like, he was freaked out by that, you know?
Mm.
So he was not already not being a dad, he was not like present at all. But then when my mom came with the message that she was pregnant a second time, he decided, yeah, it was a little too much for him. And a little bit of like background about him is he was the only child from his mom and dad. And then 10 years later, his mom remarried and had a bunch of other kids, I think four other children. So there was probably some trauma there that, I never really got to know. But yeah, he ended up calling my mom at some point close to when she was due to give birth and said like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I was not there for you guys, I know you're a smart woman, you're a really kind person. You're gonna take really good care of my children, but unfortunately I won't be around to help that, right?" And the next day he was found dead. He had committed suicide. Yeah, so I think I was like 2.5 when this happened, so obviously I have no memory of him. The reason I brought it up is because that was a trigger for my mom to be like, okay, you know what? I need God, Because I think his family, which was a wealthy family, rejected her and were like, you're basically in the relationship for the money. Her own parents were disappointed in her because in her culture, women are not supposed to go very far educationally. And all her brothers did not do well in school, but she was really smart, so she had gone all the way. So already there was a bit of like, hey, you're making the boys look bad, And then on top of that, you get pregnant. So she was being rejected on both sides. She was like, you know what? Let me give God a chance. So she studied the Bible with ICSC, got baptized while she was still pregnant with my brother. And then that started us on this faith journey, right? So I ended up growing up in the church. I love the church. It's a really fantastic church, and I still have really good relationships with people there. And from what I'm seeing from a lot of converts, I think it's important to maintain those relationships, not just like have a straight hard cut. But yeah, I loved it. My mom was, having a great time because she was in the campus. She was part of what's called the campus ministry. So it's a really vibrant ministry. I think all branches of Church of Christ usually has a really strong campus ministry and teens ministry. So it's like centered in a lot of good, clean fun. There's a lot of like hanging out in people's homes. And one thing that I loved about the church was I would have all these sleepovers in brothers' homes because I didn't have a dad. I used to spend more time in other people's homes, just to hang out with them and stuff. And I noticed like everywhere I went, it was the same. There was no like they're not pretending to be Christians. It's like
Mhm.
how they looked like on Sundays, how they looked at home. And that was like really encouraging to me. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And it was like everyone was happy, people are having lots of fun. And I was like, why would you want to do anything else? So fast forward to when I'm around 12, they start studying the Bible with me, some of the because I was always involved I was in everything. Bible studies, whenever there was like hangouts, I'd always be there. One of the leaders started studying the Bible with me. I didn't realize it. because my own personal Bible study looked like it, you know. So I was just, oh, this is just, you know, what we normally do. We usually open the Bible all the time. What was weird about it is they took notes for me, you know. So I didn't know that that was kind of like the procedure. It's like when they're studying the Bible, they kind of write notes for you, so you have something to go home and, you know, reflect on what you had studied. I was like, I can take my own notes, like I don't know. But I was like, hey, either way, it's fine. So I would, you know, reflect on the notes. They look like my own notes, so I was just like, I was just going along with it, you know. And then much later into the studies, one of the last studies is like the cross, so like the Passion of Christ, and recognizing what he did for you, and now you the decision to now respond to that call, you know. And then there's this study that's called Counting the Cost. I think they've changed the structure of doing that, but when I was doing it, it was a structured way of joining ICOC, right? Kind of like at OCIA in a way, you know? And they asked me like, "Hey, so you've been studying the Bible for a while. Do you think you want to be a Christian, you know?" I was like, "Absolutely." First of all, I was like, I didn't realize we've been studying the Bible, you know? But when I realized, I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I wanna be a Christian. There's no
How
like
old were you?
opposition." I was
How old?
12. I
12.
was,
Okay.
yeah. So they asked me a bunch of questions because growing up in the church, you're well known, you know, like I was growing up at the time when the church was young, so I saw it grow and spread. So most of the people in the church in Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya, they know me. And also the offshoots that went and planted other churches. It's like I was well known across most of East Africa. So it was easy for me to be a Christian, you know? And they're like, hey, like your mom is, you know, a vibrant Christian. She's well known, she's well loved, you're well loved, your family. It's like, what if they all went away? Would you still be a Christian, you know? I was like, yeah, I do. I don't do it for them. Like, it's great to have the community, but I know, like, at the end of the day, it's like between me and Jesus, you know? So I was like, yeah, I'd definitely stay. And they're like, what if you're plopped in like a place with no Christians, like the Middle East or something like that, you know? Some part of, I don't know, just name a place. Would you still be a Christian by yourself? And I was like, yeah, I didn't do it for the people, you know? And then what about your mom? Because your mom was a big influence, because you know she really like modeled Christianity for me. I was like, yeah, even if she left, I've gotten to the point where I understand it for myself. So I think I still want to be a Christian. So basically, they went through all these steps, and I was like, yes, 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 yes. And they're like, "All right, if you're ready, then we'd baptize you next Sunday, you know?" So I was baptized. And I don't know what I imagined baptism was supposed to be because I always heard all these stories of people who are like, man, I felt the Holy Spirit, you know? I was expecting a version of that, you know, but I didn't feel any different, you know. I went into the waters, I came out, and I was like, something feels off. I was like, I thought I was supposed to feel different. And then also, I was baptized in a swimming pool that was like under maintenance, so it was like half empty. And I'm 6'2", so I'm pretty tall. So it's like when I went in, I slipped and my leg came out. So I was like, oh, my leg didn't it didn't get baptized. It's just like a
Only
weird.
a partial baptism.
Actually, yeah. So it was like a thing that used to like bug me a little bit, but you know, my mentors who are called disciples were like, no, you're fine, don't worry about it, you know. So anyway, after that, I moved from, so the church divides ages when you're growing up, like you have classes for age groups. And one of the final ones is teens ministry before you come into like now campus ministry, and that you come into the main building, right? But all the other ages, they have like small classes outside the main building where you have like little stations and you know they have the Bible stories and things like that. So I started coming to the main building now, right? I was like, it's a little intimidating because I'm used to being around kids, now there's adults, you know? But the message was the same, so I wasn't like put off by that. And then towards the end, there was this announcement, a call for helping the kids ministry,
Hmm.
which is a typical thing every year. There's calls because it's volunteer based, you know? And they were like lamenting, like, hey, we've been making this announcement, but people are not volunteering, you know? The kids ministry is like the future. So it's like, we need to like give our heart for that, you know? It's nice to be in the sermon and receive the message, but the kids also need to learn, you know? And I was like, man, why are they not volunteering, you know? Because I loved the kids ministry. That's pretty much how I became a Christian because of the kids ministry. It was so much fun over there, you know? I was like, well, I'm a Christian. The Bible says, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. So I was like, I'll teach. Why not? You know? So I went to the meeting location where the teachers were kind of getting a bit of training and, picking the class age group that you're going to teach. And I was there, and everyone was obviously like a dad or a mom, like way older than me. I'm the only 12-year-old over there. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. God will help me. So I looked around at the stations. I was like, well, I can't teach the kids like babies because I'm scared. I was scared of babies. I was like, I don't know how to change diapers and all that. And then I was like, the in-between ages, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I was well suited for that. But then my younger brother was not interested in Christianity. And I was like, maybe I can influence him if I teach him. And for context, he's only 3 years younger than me. So I was like, yeah, it'll make sense. It's like someone who's about their age, showing some form of leadership. Maybe I'll influence him. That was like the heart I had. And it was like, it was nice. It was awesome because one, it wasn't as intimidating because some of these people were in the same classes. I just like left the class. Um, and it actually led to a lot of people becoming baptized from that. But my brother was not like one of those people. And then another thing that I got discouraged by when I was teaching is a lot of my fellow teachers who are older than me, like would show up to class not very well prepared. Like I was the most prepared. And I was like, I'm coming here to learn from you guys, and I feel like I'm more teaching you. So that was a little disappointing. And then later on, other parents were like really like, oh wow, look at Leslie, he's like teaching all these kids and stuff. And they would bring their kids to me for me to disciple, so like mentor them. And I was like, I'm not ready for that. I'm still a kid myself. But I started noticing like there was a need for like mentorship in young people, and a lot of parents were struggling because there was a lot of like absentee dads, and
Mm.
just like, society kind of is like that. And because of that, a lot of kids end up picking out the best options. And also just the appeal of the world. But for me, I don't know, like I guess the way my mom brought me up, it didn't end up making the world look appealing. It made the church look more appealing than the world. So I'd always try and help my friends to be like, hey, church is fun. Like whenever we would have like, I don't know, a picnic or like, something that's not so scholarly. I'm like, come, let's play soccer on this church event or basketball or whatever it is. And sometimes they would come. But the sad thing is, a lot of the kids I grew up with, almost like 99% of them left the faith. They just
What?
didn't even join another like denomination. They just left the
What
church.
age? When were they leaving? Do you know?
Um, Between 12 and like 18
Okay.
was like a big window of people just like they were like en masse going. And I didn't understand, but whenever I'd find them, I'd try the best I could to bring them back. And for context, ICOC used to call themselves the one true church that traces back all the way to Christ. So I grew up thinking that. So I was like, man, these guys have left Jesus's church. Like, there's no other one. This is the only one you have. You can't find anything else. So I was praying for them one day they'll come back. And regardless of that, like anyway, so I continue growing. I leave the kids ministry. I'm like, okay, let me try and have fun now. I was a little too serious for my age. So I'm like, okay, let me try out things of the world. So I put on some dreadlocks. I started trying to fit in a little bit more. I'm still going to church. I'm still very serious about God, but I'm just like a little bit more compromising. I think the seed for that compromise started like around the beginning of high school. It was 12, 13 is when you join high school in Kenya. And I remember going with a conviction there, like, I'm not gonna join Facebook. I'm not gonna join any of the things. I'm gonna like just be in my books, graduate, and not like get intertwined with all the high school drama I've heard of. That didn't last very long. Because I walked in and this was like a fancier school than I was used to. So I was used to going to public school, and this was a private school. So I was like, all these families are wealthy. Because my mom over the years, she kind of like got better financially with education and promotions and stuff. So we were in a better place by the time I was in high school. And I was like intimidated by that. I was like, I don't know if my English is as good as theirs. These guys are just well more traveled. They know more than me. So I just shrunk a little bit. And then I decided to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to sit back and just be quiet and just observe before I evangelize. I'm like, let me learn the lay of the land, not be a weirdo, But the world doesn't wait on you. So it's like as I'm doing this, the kids are like settling in, and this was like a mixed high school. So one of the things that was happening was older students were like taking an interest in the younger students. I think it was kind of a culture. So I remember there was one time the Form 3. I don't know what the equivalent here is in the US, but it's like after there's 4 years of high school. So the
Hmm.
Form 1, 2, 3, 4. So like the Form 3 class came to the Form 1, which is like the freshmen. They'll be like, hey, you guys are cute, like we were looking for boyfriends or whatever. And I was surprised by that, but also obviously I didn't engage in that. But some people did. And then people are starting to get girlfriends and boyfriends and all that. And I was just like, oh, well, that's them. I'm not gonna participate, right? But at the second year of high school, people are like, Leslie's weird. He doesn't really like come smoke weed, doesn't like, do all these crazy things. He's always just quiet. So there was a rumor that came that, oh, maybe he's gay. And I was like, well, oh no. When I got the rumor, I was like, all right, we gotta kill this rumor. I guess I have to show that I am interested in girls just to be considered normal. What do people do? So I asked one of my friends, I was like, oh, what are the kids doing these days? And he was like, well, everyone's on Facebook now. That was like the hit. I was like, all right, I joined Facebook. I was like, okay, I'm in Facebook. Is that it? They're like, no, how many friends do you have on Facebook? I was like, oh no. So I was like, okay, all the people in church that I know are on Facebook. So I just friended the people in church, and easily got like over 1,000 friends. I was like, okay, I have 1,000 friends. Is that good enough? Like they're like, no, do you need to get like girls to message you? And I was like, oh, it's hard to click in what's going on? I was like, oh, I cannot do that with the sisters in church? I'll get rebuked. And also I don't believe in it. So I was like, okay, so I can't do that. So I was like, okay, I have to find somebody I don't know. Because to me, this was just an excursion to like kill the rumor?
Yeah.
It wasn't really like I was serious about it. So I said, okay, Facebook had this thing like, friend of a friend thing. It's like related friends. So I started friending girls. I felt guilty the whole time, but I was like, man, okay, I guess I have to do this. And then I friended some. I was like, okay, I friended a few. So I decided to message a few of them, just a normal message. I wasn't trying to be like sexual or anything. I couldn't bring myself to do that? And they responded. I was like, why did they respond to me? I'm like, I'm a stranger, it's like just friended you on Facebook and somehow you're just okay. Well, like, okay, I guess this is like a way people connect on Facebook? So I was like, okay, let me see. I've never tried to date anyone, so let me see if I can get someone to fall in love with me? So I spoke to this one particular girl. She quickly fell in love with me? So on one hand, I was like impressed. I was like, oh, I guess I know how to do that? But then I got guilty again. I was like, oh no, but she's a real person. And this was more like a game for me. I was just like testing it out. And I was like, behind that little red button and that chat box, there's a real person on the other side. And as a Christian, I can't like be okay with that? So immediately I was like, okay, I've proved my point, but I have to end this. I can't like lead her on. That's wrong? I was trying to figure out a way that would be gentle, to do it, trying to find ways to like get a meeting place. So we started talking about, neighborhoods we live in. And it turned out we lived in the exact same neighborhood. And more than that, we were neighbors, and my room and her room faced each other, because had like these apartment blocks. And I'm like, somehow I'd never seen her before? So I was like, oh no. So it's like it got really real. So it's like the possibility of actually face-to-face contact was like high? I was like, I gotta man up. I have to own up my mistake. I have to tell it. But I tried to fix it first. I was like, okay, maybe I can save this. Because ICOC was like, you can't date outside of ICOC. So like maybe if I get her to join ICOC, it'll be fine. And then it'll be okay? Because I just didn't want to break her heart? So I was like, oh, why don't you come to our church? I was trying to like, invite her. The motive was simply just to like cover up my mistake? And she's like, oh, well, I'm a Christian. I go to a different church. I was like, oh man. Because I was like, how do I explain this? Because we looked at everyone else as heretics? Okay, that's good, but like, would you be okay visiting our church once, because, the model was like a come and see, and it's like once people come, they see the love, they're like, okay, I want to join. And eventually, it just became like there was no good reason to explain why she should join ours and leave hers, So eventually, I just, told her to meet in person, and I did the best job to like let her down easy, and explain the reasons why. And she was very charitable about it. I was very impressed. She was like, "Hey, I understand, And on some level, we're still friends to this day, God helped me there. That was like an easy out for that situation. But then I had gotten that bug of feeling like someone likes you. And I liked it. I liked that, oh, there's this person who likes you, and it's like they are craving your attention, and you're craving it back. But I can't date outside the church. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll pay more attention to the sisters in church. And we have these things called encouragement dates. They're not meant to be romantic. They're meant to be more like, to
Courtship?
help. Yeah, not courtship even. It's just because in the world, girls are always getting attention from all kinds of people. So as men, as a call to leadership, it's like you're still taking them out so they get like the dating experience without like the follow-up of like usually in the world there's like sex and all that. It's like you don't need that. It's like a clean way of a safe environment where you're dating, but the goal is genuinely just to encourage the person.
Friendship.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
if you end up falling in love, like, hey, then there's more steps you can get towards like, adding to that. So okay, I'll start doing fellowship. For short, we used to call them fellow. So I start asking sisters out on fellow. It was nice and was enjoying it. I was enjoying my time there. And then one time when we were having like a outing, like a hiking excursion, there's this particular sister who was there, who was not hanging out with anyone else. She was just sitting by herself with her novel, and we're like playing frisbee. And I was concerned for her. I was like, what's up with her? So I went to decided, let me go encourage her. So I went sat next to her. A long story short, like the whole day passed and I didn't realize. I just enjoyed talking to her that much. And I was like, wow, I love playing. So it would be hard for me to like just sit down and, have a long conversation. So that like surprised me that I was able to do that with her. And at the end of the day, got her number. We kept talking all the time. And then a few months later, I realized I think I really like her. I was like, well, okay, she checks all the boxes. She's in the church. Okay. We didn't do anything wrong. We are just talking. It naturally progressed. It's like, okay, I'm checking all the boxes, but there's one box I was not checking, which is age. Because the legal age to date for ICSC is like over 18. And I think I was around 15 around that time. So like, okay, we'll just keep it at this level until I finish high school and then we'll make it official. That was like my intention. I think she had the same impression as well. So we kept like, kept it there. And people got to know, like, it was kind of like we were dating, but not officially dating according to ICSC standards, because you have to announce to everybody,
Oh,
hey, we're dating. It's kind of like a proposal, but it's not like there's no ring. It's just like flowers. It's just like a nice little thing that you do to like proclaim, like, hey, I'm serious about this person. So you don't like go around talking to other girls at the same time. So it's like known that these two are dating and it's exclusive, right? That's like the goal for that. So when the time came after high school, I was like, okay, now's the time. I told her, hey, I'm going to tell your mom for permission to date you. And by that time, we had been dating like 4 years, and it was awesome. And she surprised me what she said. She was like, I'm not ready yet. I was like, for 4 years? So that threw me for a loop. And the way I took it was like it's either you're 100% or you're not in it at all. Because I was like I genuinely other people would approach me and I was warding them off. I was like, no, I'm gonna marry her. So that made things shaky. And then also my mom at some point behind my back went and rebuked the girl. I don't know why. But in front of like a bunch of my friends, she was like, I don't want to see you next to my son and stay away from him, which was really weird because our family and their family were really close friends. And they all knew that we liked each other and there was nothing going on. So I didn't understand why she did that, right? So I confronted my mom And I was still like, hey, I don't know, you're kind of like my role model. So if there's anything about her that you saw that I didn't know, let me know. Like, so I understand and I can explain to her because she's really hurt. And I think we need to like resolve this. But my mom's response was not a disciple's response, I could say, you know. She was very proud about it. She was like, hey, are you picking her over me, you know? And mind you, like I love and respect my mom thoroughly, but this was just like a moment. So I was really disappointed in that, you know? But obviously it brought tensions. She was saying she was unsure. My mom had done like the rebuke on her. So eventually, needless to say, that relationship kind of just died. And during this time, there were other girls who were trying to get my attention, and obviously I wasn't paying attention to them. So I was like, I'd never imagined dating anyone else. So I gave it a shot with one of the other ones. Because I asked my mom, like, if you don't think she's good enough for me, who do you think is good, you know? And she gave me a list of two girls. So I picked one of them, started talking to them. I fell in love with her, but I also felt weird because I was like, my mom picked you, you know? And I didn't like that, you know? But then she fell in love really hard, really, really fast, right? And she was ready for marriage immediately. That makes no sense because we're not ready financially. Emotionally, I felt I wasn't mature enough, you know? But I could see she was ready. So like that scripture that don't awaken love before it's ready became real for me, you know? I was like, oh no, she's in love, I'm in love, but I'm not ready for marriage because it would not be responsible to be married right now. Would be poor, would be like, I don't know where we would live, you know? But she was like, I don't care, even if we live in a cardboard house, it's okay. I was like, man, that's admirable, but I don't want you to live in a cardboard house. I want to give you a real house, you know? So I broke up with her for those. I was like, she's too ready for me. And then I made a resolve after that. Because of that experience, because breaking up with her was very hard for me, because I really, really liked her as well, you know. I said, the next time I choose to date somebody, it'll be because I'm ready to be married and I'm going to go all the way. Unless something happens in one way or another, I'm going all the way. It wouldn't be like a trying it out type of thing. And I was like, okay. So because of that, I decided mentally I blocked that idea of dating. So I was like, unless I'm ready to go all the way, I won't even start because it's not fair to the girl's heart, you know? And this is like around the time I was in college where I had picked to do animation in Kenya. So I was doing animation. My mom didn't think that was a very serious career. She's a really smart person. So in Kenya and a lot of like African countries, arts are not really respected, you know.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think now it's getting better, but at the time she was like, "What do you mean you're gonna draw for the rest of your life?" You know. So she pushed me. She was like, "If you wanna do animation, then I think you need to go to America, right?" And I didn't think that was a great idea because I was like, America, there's racism, you know, there's like it's saturated with animations. Like, what am I going to go add over there, you know? But she was like, no, if you're gonna do animation, you need to go to America. So she convinced me. I came. I went to a school in LA, and all the things I was scared of, I experienced, you know? So I went to this private school called Otis College of Art and Design. And this school, I don't think they'd ever had an African student before. I think I was the first one. But I also felt like beyond that, I was like one of the few black students in the whole school. I picked LA thinking it's gonna be diverse, but it's not diverse. It's not. It's.
What
I
year was
thought
this, Leslie? What year?
2013,
Okay.
2013. Yeah. LA, in my experience, has like blocks of diversity. It's like there's a block that's all Korean, a block that's all Latino, block that's black, but it's not like really mixed. And the blocks don't really interact with each other. Not really. At least that's what I saw, right? And I was in the wealthier part of LA, so this place called Westchester. And when I was there, I mean, I was expecting the racism, so when it happened in school, I was not really surprised, you know? But what hurt me was in the church. So when I went to the church, because ICOC is like worldwide. So when I went to the LA church, I experienced the exact form of racism as the one I was getting in school. And I was like, in the church? What? You know? I'd never seen that before because in the Nairobi church, we'd have American people come and back and forth and would always welcome them. And I was like, imagine it's the same the other way.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it was so bad. Because the early days, I was like, okay, I'm in a new place for the first time. I think the best thing to do is to try and be in people's faces to build relationships. So I don't like sitting in the front, but I just decided, let me start sitting in the front. So after service, I'd stay a little longer to hang out with people. If there's a hangout somewhere, I'd show up. But it was taking a long time to integrate. It felt like people are not wanting for me to integrate because I'd show up to people's homes, parties, whatever. And then on Sunday, they'd be like, "Are you visiting? Are you new here?" I'm like, "I was in your house." The first few weeks, it made sense. Then after a few months, I was like, "Okay, it's a little weird." And then 2 years in, I was like, "Okay, now there's something off here." There are a few people who would recognize me, but for the most part, everyone was like, "Are you visiting?" I hated that question. Because I was like, I've been here for like 2 years, going on three, and people still don't remember me. So coming to church was becoming painful, because it's like people would not want to sit next to you, um, you know, and then like you try to hang out and they give you like a fake reason why they don't want to, and you realize quickly it's because of race. It's like, wow, this is really sad that's happening in the church. So after a while, I was like, why am I even coming here? It's like it sucks worse to come here than not to come here. Because like I experienced all the stresses of school and then the stresses of racism in school. Church is supposed to be my safe haven. I get more of it. So I feel even worse. I was like, why am I even coming? I think I should stop going to church altogether. So I stopped going to church. And when I did, I got even hurt more because one thing that ICSC has always been known for is if somebody doesn't show up who you've been seeing around, they'll call you. They'll be like, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" Like they'll come check up on you. And I guess there was a part of me that was hoping they would do that. And they didn't. They did not call, text, nobody. And I think I wasn't going for almost like 2 months. And I was like, okay, so I really don't matter. It's kind of like how I felt. I felt like insignificant. And I remember like seeing a fly. It's a funny little thing. I was just sitting down like reflecting and I saw a fly. I was like, I feel like that fly has a better life than me. Because like it doesn't have to worry about being discriminated or like it's just a fly. It's just being what it is, you
What
know?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, man, and then I got really sad for African Americans because I was like, I'm just experiencing a little bit of this. But they grew up here. And I'm like, LA is supposed to be the better places because in movies we hear Mississippi and all those places. I was like, I'm sure that's bad, but LA is bad? And I'm like, if LA is bad, how is it over there? That's kind of like the mindset I had. And then I went on this rabbit hole of researching racism and stuff. And I realized just how bad it is across the world. Because in Africa, you're sheltered. You don't really see it because it's majority black. You kind of watch a movie here and there, but it's not top of mind.
Sure.
But then on the church side, I was like, I remember the questions they asked me before baptism. And I was like, when I was being baptized, I did not even know there was an LA church. So if I die today and I meet Jesus and he asked me, why did you leave church? My reason would be like, well, they were mean to me. And it's like, were you baptized for them? My answer would be like, no. I was like, that was a really bad reason to leave the church. I had to kind of like disciple myself. And I was like, what are you supposed to do when people mistreat you? And I remember the scripture, it's like, I think if a brother hurts you, approach them.
Yeah.
And if they don't listen to you, bring another witness, and then if they don't listen to that, bring it to the church. I was like, oh, I've not done any of those stuff. I was like, okay, let me try it out. I've never had to use that scripture before, but let me try it out. So I was like, okay, I called individually some of those people. And one by one, over coffee, nice, comfortable setting. I wasn't like super aggressive about it. And I just like brought it out. I was like, hey bro, hey sis, like whenever this happened, whenever like you said this to me or treated me this way, it really hurt me and it made me not feel welcome. And like across the board, they were all super apologetic. They were like, oh man, I did not realize. I was just having a hard day, a hard month, whatever. And I quickly kind of like internalized it was not intentional. I don't think they were doing it like maliciously. Although I did think it was when it was happening.
Sure.
But after talking to them, I was like, oh, nobody's malicious like that. It's like sometimes you have a prejudice and you don't even realize you have it. So it kind of like lifted this weight off of my shoulders because I was feeling like really bitter. So I didn't even need to talk to everyone because I was like, oh, well, if it's not intentional, I was like, well, I'm sinful too. It's like I have bad days, so it's like I should have grace for them, you know? And then the final thing I had to do was just talk to the leader of the church, the lead evangelist. So I sat him down. I'd been to his house a few times. So, I was like, hey, I just want to talk to you. I shared with him my predicament, and he was like, man, Leslie, I don't know how to tell you, but I knew you were struggling. I knew, but I didn't know what to do. And that kind of hurt me because I was like, if you knew, why didn't you even reach out just to be like, hey, are you okay? You had my number, all this. That's what I thought internally. I didn't say it to him. But he continued to talk and he said, one thing he had experienced is, so he's from Asia. He's a Chinese American. And he was one of the people who planted most of the ICOC branches in Asia,
Mm.
like Hong Kong, China, and a lot of the Far East. And when he came, he was installed in leadership, replacing somebody who had been asked to step down. And a lot of the church didn't agree with that. So there was a lot of the church that was hurting because of that. So he was saying, like, part of what you're experiencing is some of that, Because a lot of the church, some of the members left because of that guy being asked to step down. And then he said, like, he himself experiences racism within the leadership. And he would say, like, whenever he had like idea or something, they would shut it down. And it was simply because of his race. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize you experienced that too. And then the other thing was, he said, being a leader is a really lonely thing. Most people only reach out with problems. So they're like, hey, my wife wants to leave me, or hey, my kids don't listen, or whatever. It's always some crisis when they're calling. But nobody ever calls a leader and be like, hey, how are you doing? What can I pray for you? And that hit me really hard because I was like, you know what? You're right. I've never checked on a leader before. I've never been like, hey, how are you doing? Can I pray for you? It's always like some kind of issue I'm trying to figure out, or I was like, man, that must be hard on them? So it made me like have a lot of grace on leaders. And I was like, man, we need to be more patient with these people. They have a hard job. And then I don't know why this kind of came to me. I realized like when I was in Kenya, I was in my comfort zone. Whenever we'd have all these visitors from other countries coming in, I realized I did the same thing to them without realizing, because they would show up and the church would announce them. It's like, hey, this person is visiting for the Philippines or from Japan or whatever. Like go hang out with them, check on them, give them the Kenyan experience. And after church, you go give them a big hug. How you doing? It's like you inundate them with all this love. But after that, I'm like, how many times did I ever call them? Like to be like, hey, are you settling in okay? I was like, I don't think I ever did even once. I was like, man, I'm a hypocrite, Because I was like, I'm calling this guy's horrible for doing this. And I'm like, I did the exact same thing. I was like, man, people really need grace? And it changed my whole perspective. We're all sinners. We all need help. So it changed my heart fundamentally. And then I realized, like, when Jesus said he died for everyone, I was like, he really died for everyone. It's like it's like I'm a joke of a mess. And he died for me. And I was like, who's the worst person I could think of? I was like, the jihadists in Middle East. I was like, he died for them too. I was like, if they repented and they got baptized, they'd go to heaven. And I was like, wow. Yeah, my concept of love is not equal to God's love. It's like I have a very limited definition of who's lovable and who's not. I was like, I need to change that. And then I made a friend during this time who's still my friend to this day. One of the few friends I made when I was there. And he told me, why'd you come to this ministry? There's a ministry closer to your house. So for context, like I was taking the bus to go to the location where they were meeting. It was like a 3-hour bus ride. Which is horrible. It's like you're switching buses. And I don't know if you've tried LA's public system. It's not the best. But there was a church like 15 minutes away from me. And I didn't know. I just didn't know. I just thought this was the only one in LA. And I was like, oh man, but I didn't want to live with bitter feelings. So after resolving with all these people, I was like, okay, let me go check out the other one. It was in Long Beach. I was living closer to Long Beach. So the ministry in Long Beach was completely different to the one in LA. So they were more like the one I had experienced in Kenya. So they were super welcoming, super loving. Day one, they're like, hey, how you doing? I was like, oh, okay. So it's like I realized don't dismiss people, it's like they might be going through a tough time. So after all this, I mentioned that I was doing research on racism, and I was doing a deep dive on all these countries where people have been discriminated and really discouraged by that. And I kind of like was struggling to figure out what's the solution for all this. And I realized there's no good solution other than God. And I was taken back to like Saul in the Old Testament when the Israelites didn't want God as their king anymore. And once they picked Saul, it's like things went downhill after that. All the other leaders all had some kind of issues. And then Paul, when he was killing the Christians, the only thing that changed him was Jesus like having an encounter with him. So like that's what people need. Unless they have Christ, you can try and shame people or as much as you want, or you can try and like convince them what they're doing is wrong. It won't make a difference. The only thing that truly makes a difference and changes the heart is Jesus. And then around that time, I found the Ethiopian church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was like an ancient church. Because I'd met people from that church before, but I just thought it was just one of the denominations.
You found this in the LA area? You found
Yeah,
it?
when I was in LA, like
Okay.
when I was researching like Black history,
Sure.
and the history of racism and stuff, at some point, like I started just looking at Black history in general. And
Hmm.
one of the things that came up was the Ethiopian church.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what? These people are from the fourth century? I was like, if there's a church from the fourth century still here today, is there one from the first century?
That's good.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And I was like looking at what they believe and how they practice, and I was like, it looks very different to our church. It looks kind of Catholic. And I was like, okay, okay. And I was like, I always wondered what happened to the apostles. Where did they go? And when I looked where they planted churches, I was like, everywhere looks a little Catholic. And then something I didn't mention, during my time in Kenya, there was a Bible class we did. And one of the things that they train you in to be ready for apologetics is like Bible history. How do you know the Bible is the Bible? And one of the things the teacher said was there's some books that were not included in the canon that were in circulation in the first few centuries. I was like, why did they leave them out? So I investigated that on my own because I was like, if the Holy Spirit is what guided them to put it together, could I look at those other books and be like, they shouldn't be in the Bible? So I tried doing that myself and I couldn't come to the same conclusion because I was like, things like the Gospel of Nicodemus, I'm like, I feel like that should be in there? Or like,
Shepherd of Hermas.
yeah, yeah, Hermes and stuff. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
this book should be in there?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so clearly there was something more than that that they had that I don't know, right? So I kind of like let that go. And in my walk, I'd meet a lot of other Protestants, and they had crazy beliefs? So I was like, how did you guys come to that? From the Bible, and I would question, like one group were called like God the Mother. And I'm like, God the Mother, where did you get that from? And I think they quote Revelation 12. And I looked at Revelation 12. I was like, I don't think this is talking about God the Mother. And things like that I would come across, which would be like, I don't understand. We read the same Bible, but we come to like a lot of weird conclusions? I don't know how much time we have, but like like I'll jump a lot of the history and just, so I was struggling with all this. I found the Ethiopian church. I just thought it was really cool that there was an old African church? And then much later, one of my friend dies through suicide, right? Very recently. And remember, my dad committed suicide, so it was triggering. So I was like, man, what causes people to commit suicide? So I looked into suicide a lot and came across these things called near-death experiences, right? Never heard of them before. So I was like now in that rabbit hole for a long time? And I'm like, they kept saying they meet Jesus, they meet like the Holy Spirit. Some say they meet Muhammad and Buddha, and I was like, what do you mean they meet Muhammad? So I really investigated for a long time, and I was trying to match what they're saying with the Bible, and it's like sometimes it lines up, sometimes it doesn't? So I was like, what should I do with that? So I tried to research Buddhism for a while because some of these people get new agey? And I was like, maybe there's truth to new age stuff? So I researched it for a while, and it quickly started not to make sense because I was like, there's too many. It feels like people make it up? So eventually, I just decided all this ND stuff, the ones I believe are the ones that believe like line up with the Bible. I'll just stay with that. but it opened me up to spiritual stuff, right? Then I discovered this guy called Sam Shamoun. So Sam Shamoun is like a really strong apologist, and he really argues a lot with Muslims, And I'd never seen people evangelizing Muslims. So I was like, okay, this is really cool. And his style is pretty abrasive. But one time he met someone from Church of Christ, like the branch that ICC came from. And I was like, oh, another Christian. It's like we're the same team, okay? But he like rebuked that lady and was like, why are you guys calling yourself the Church of Christ? The Catholic Church is the Church of Christ. And I was like, what do you mean, And he was like, when did your church form? And he came up, he had all this like reasons why the Church of Christ is not the original church. And one thing that he said that now stuck with me was, how do you know your paradigm is true? Because like I was like, huh, I never really thought of that. Because like I thought I knew the truth, so I was using that to judge other places. And I was like, how do I know my measuring stick is true? Like I just believe it. I was like, have I ever challenged my own belief? I was like, no. So like, okay, so I went into research of how Church of Christ was formed. And it was like, you go all the way back. It's like Stone Campbell movement and then the Presbyterian church before that. And it all goes back to the Catholic church. I'm like, huh. And then I saw a testimony by a Muslim convert called Nikki Kingsley. Her story like shook my whole world. So she said Mary spoke to her through her journey of figuring out what was the deal with Mary talking to her, and then Jesus at some point was talking to her. She went to a Protestant church, right? And she's like, well, show me. Like, you want me it seems like you're sending me Christian messages. And when she went there, she was like, Jesus is not here. She went, I think, for a Christmas service. And that line, Jesus was not here, hit me, right? And then later on, she went to a Catholic church and she said Jesus was there. And I was like, oh, what? Hold on a minute. That's really big for me. Because initially I was like, okay, I don't know. It seems like it's okay. Like people are confused a little bit about Christianity, but it's still following Christ in a way. But when she said that Jesus was not in the Protestant church, I was like, I have to investigate that. So I went to the closest Catholic church, went to a statue of Mary. And I did a short prayer. I was like, God, I'm sorry if I offended your mom. If there's something Mary wanted to show me, please show me. Because I don't know. I just didn't know that I was supposed to like have more honor on her. And then nothing really happened. But then a priest who was walking in the garden he just told me, hey, are you new here? Like, there's confession today. You should go check it out. So I go in there. And I see this woman in the pews holding the biggest Bible I've ever seen. And she's glowing. Like she's emanating a bunch of light off of her whole body. And I'm like, is anyone else seeing this? So I kind of like don't know what to do with it, right? So I sit on the line. She's kind of like on the distance over there. And eventually gather the courage to go talk to her. And I'm like, hey, all I say is like, I'm just new here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And she just tells me, like, sit on the confessional, like, just follow the line. So I go into the confessional, talk, and start arguing with the priest in there. I'm like, the Catholic Church. I'm like, Martin Luther corrected you guys. Jerome didn't believe in you guys. And I'm having all this like back and forth with the priest. And then he tells me, he kind of corrects me on Martin Luther a little bit. But because of time, I just tried to be like, let me not take too much time for the other guys trying to come to confession. But he said, if you ever consider being Catholic, like come to this parish. And for some reason, that rubbed me the wrong way. Because I was like, why this specific parish? Is it different to other parishes? I thought the Catholic Church is the same everywhere. So like, let me check out another parish. So I went to another one downtown Raleigh during Mass, and this time I'm open. I'm like, I'm not judging anyone. I'm doing all the things, the kneeling, standing, everything. And when it comes time for the Eucharist, I line up. Because in my worldview, I'm a baptized Christian, so I can take Holy Communion in any other church, right? That's how I thought. So when I walk up to the priest to get it, he says body of Christ. I wasn't expecting him to say anything, but what I heard is, are you a Christian? That's what I heard him say. And his face was shining like that lady I saw in the other parish. And that like threw me for a whirlwind. So I ate it, I went to the confessional, and then they gave me like some Hail Marys to do. And I was like, what was that about? There was a shining lady, there was a shining priest, you know? I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, you know? And then I decided to fast and pray for 3 days. I was like, God, I don't know. You show me. I want to have a relationship with you because I feel like I know about you. From everything I'm learning, I know a lot about you and your church, but I don't know if I have a true relationship with you in my heart. It feels like there's a bit of a disconnect there, you know? It's more head heavy. So I pray this prayer, and then a voice starts speaking to me that I've never heard from. It's not my head voice, it's a different voice, you know? And it starts saying a lot of weird things. Like the first thing it tells me is Gamaliel, you know? It's like Gamaliel. It's just Gamaliel, Gamaliel, Gamaliel. And when I look it up, Gamaliel in the book of Acts, he said like this statement to the other Pharisees that if this is from God, it'll stand the test of time. But if it's not from God, it'll dissipate by itself, like referring to the apostles and their ministry. I was like, okay, last the test of time is the message, you know? Like, okay, got it. Next thing it told me was ecumenical, you know? And I was like, what's ecumenical, you know? So I learned about the councils and stuff like that. And then once I understood those, I was like, ecumenical, last the test of time. I was like, okay, okay, what are you trying to tell me, you know? And then it said liturgy and litany. Liturgy and litany, those two words. So when I look it up, I was like, okay, it's a style of worship. And I was like, only like the Catholics do it, the Anglicans do it. I was like, okay, okay, cool. Litany, liturgy. Where are we going here, you know? And then I went to our so ICOC service on Sunday, and we were having Holy Communion. So now I was convinced it's supposed to be the body and blood of Christ. So I prayed a small prayer. I was like, this is truly your body and blood. And then I ate it. But this was right after I had taken the Eucharist before in the Catholic Church, like a few days before. And somehow spiritually, I felt like that one got rejected in my stomach. I can't explain how, but I just could tell it was like, almost like my stomach churned or something, you know? And I was like, that's not a valid Holy Communion. It finally hit, you know? So the next Sunday I couldn't take it. I was like, I can't take that. That's not a real Holy Communion. I don't know how to explain it, but I just know it's not, you know? So I was like, okay, I was visiting parishes and people are like, oh, there's adoration. I didn't get it. I was just like, it seems like I'm being led to the Catholic Church, but I don't know what to do with it, you know? So I eventually found a church close to my house and I was at adoration and I still didn't get it, you know? People are like looking at the monstrance. I didn't know what the monstrance was, you know? So I asked this old lady sitting next to me, I was like, hey, I think I want to learn more about the Catholic Church. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like, what are you supposed to do, you know? So she takes me to the office, they lead me to the OCIA director, and then they plug me into OCIA, you know? So at first I was thinking OCIA would be like, oh, I'm just learning about it. Like I'll have one-on-ones with the deacon and then keep going to ICOC because I'm just like trying to connect
Yeah.
this missing dot, you know? And he was like, for you to be part of OCIA, you need to come to mass on Sunday, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's super real, you know? It's like that means I have to stop going to the other one, you know? And I wasn't sure how to communicate this with my wife, you know? So eventually, you know, I'm trying to like super summarize. There's like a lot more details, but it's like at some point I got the courage to tell my wife, you know, and obviously she freaked out. She didn't think it was coming from God. She was like, yeah, I don't know what you're doing. You're breaking the family. You know, we had come together to raise our kids a particular way, and you're moving away from that, you know? And when I made that announcement to her, something weird happened in our house. Like some electronics just like freaked out. It started like jumping around and it felt almost demonic in a weird way, you know? Because the house was completely silent and this thing starts freaking out. I was like, what was that? So I find it. It's like nobody turned it on. It somehow just turned itself on. I was like, it's like I'm touching something here when I say I want to join the Catholic Church, you know? So then I bought a rosary, started trying to learn how to pray it, you know? And then my wife one day, like, let me not speak a lot about her own experience, but she did her own research, trying to prove me wrong, and she started realizing the truths of the Catholic Church, you know. And then through this journey, like I'm learning more. I'm like finding people like Trent Horn. I found your channel. I found Catholic Answers, Matt Frad, all this like Catholic content, you know. And then I found Journey Home. And I was like, there's all these converts. I was like, I never knew there were converts, and stuff like that. And watching their testimonies, I was like, they sound similar to mine. It feels like God had always been leading me that way in a subconscious way without me realizing. So now looking back, I started noticing stuff. It's like all these questions I had always are leading me that way. Like the very first school I went to was a Catholic school, and it stuck in my head. I just never knew why I always remembered that school. I was like, I guess it was a cool school. It was called St. Peter's and Paul. And then when my mom came to the church, the members of the church were not as nice to her because she was a young girl. She didn't have a house. She was staying with my dad's best friend's house, and the church was condemning her for that. They're like, you can't live with a man who you're not married to, you
Mm,
know? But they were not giving her a place to stay. So it was like a catch-22. She's like, you shouldn't be there. It's wrong. It's
right.
sinful. But also, like, why should she stay? And one of the people who was kind to her was a Catholic. We're still friends with that family. And they've been like nice to us all through. And my mom would mention sometimes that this family is more of disciples than the disciples in our own church, in terms of like real life practice. And I was like, huh. It was just like, I noticed like there was a lot of Catholic things throughout my whole life
Yeah.
that they didn't like make sense to me at the time. I was like, huh, I've been being led the entire time.
So when did you join OCIA?
Last year. I just remember like I just like after talking to the lady, went over there, had a long talk with the deacon. I tried to summarize my story. I think you can see I'm long-winded sometimes. And then he was just like, "Yeah, I think you need to come join." And then he gave me a sponsor. Initially, they were like asking me to get a sponsor. I'm like the only Catholics I know are in Kenya, so it's like I don't know.
Fly him
So
out.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So he assigned me one, and we've been building a friendship with him, and it's been
Is-
amazing. Like a lot of things about the Catholic Church that people say, like for example, Catholics are not friendly. I was expecting that. Kind of like I was like, okay, I've been prepared for not friendly people, so it's okay. If I go there and they're not friendly, I'm fine with it. I'm just following God. Day one of going to mass at that parish, this old lady, she comes, she's like, "How you new here?" I was like, wait, Catholics are nice, like what? you know?
Oh my gosh. Did
Yeah,
your wife join? Did your wife join?
no, she comes to mass every Sunday with me now, but she hasn't
Sure.
like gotten to that point where she wants to convert. She's like, I
Sure.
get it here.
Yeah,
It's not here yet. So
totally.
hopefully one day she'll get there.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so your exposure when you go back to LA and you're researching, you finally learn about the Ethiopian
hmm
Orthodox Church. You said it seemed Catholic. Were you going back to the early days in Kenya? You had some exposure to the Mass at the Catholic
Yeah.
school, or how did I was trying to figure out what that connection was.
So the Ethiopian Orthodox Church was just interesting because it was ancient. Because in Africa, most people say Christianity came with colonization, which is like
Ah,
1800s. So it was the first time I found something older than
older
that.
than that, which is quite a leap
Yeah,
when you
it was a
think about
big
it.
leap.
My
And
goodness.
but I had gone to mass before in Kenya with my
Got it.
friend. But when I went there, I was just like, "These are not Christians." I was just like, I think it was in Latin, so I didn't understand. So I was like, "Why are we standing? Why are we sitting?" It's like, and I asked my friend, and he didn't know. So I had those experiences before, but the eyes I had before was more judgmental.
Got it.
I didn't have like an active opposition to the Catholic Church. All I knew was like that was the real church because that's what ICSC said, and then it fell away, and then a Reformation happened, and here we are. Like, but we still trace back to Christ. But I never like examined it deeper than that.
Yeah.
And I think at the time I saw the Ethiopian church, it didn't really like m m create a problem even that an older church looks Catholic than ours. I was just like, I guess that's just how Christianity looked like in the olden times, but it's evolved and that's what I thought at the time.
I'll end with one question. What
Mhm.
is your message to folks that may be watching the video that come from the denomination that you grew up in, or any other Protestant denomination, folks that are on the fence, I'd say?
What I would say to them is like, we all love Jesus, like we all agree on that. Like Jesus is our Lord and we truly want to follow him. But it's like if you really look at the Bible and see what does it mean to follow him, something that I started noticing was like the promises he made, like he'll be with us to the end of the times. What does that mean? And also like his church will never be overcome with the gates of Hades, you know? Things that I had never really wrestled with. And then just looking throughout the Bible, there's like small details that if you really pay attention to, and then try and line that up to your church. And also seeing the importance of it being one church. Like there's John 17, there's John 10, you know? There's a lot of places where it wasn't okay for us to have all these denominations. So like really seeking, okay, one, why the division? And then two, what did Jesus intend? And then looking back in history to investigate for yourself. And I truly believe anyone who's finds out the truth and they love they'll immediately want to join, you know? I think the biggest stopping point is people just don't know because the Catholic Church doesn't really advertise themselves that much, you know? So it's like nobody knows that, at least in my experience, that the Catholic Church even claims to be the original church. I had no idea, you know? So it's like people like us need to be out there and investigate that. And also, I think it's important that we are one body. So I think I used a lot of words, but basically it's like the importance of that unity of the church is key to what he started, and then investigating why it doesn't look like that today, you know?
Excellent.
And I think that's an important question that eventually will lead you that way, you know?
Great, Leslie. Thank you for sharing that incredible story. God's blessings to you and your family as you seek to enter the church here within a month. Yeah, I think something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks again. Everyone, please share this. Please comment, please like. And until next time, take care and God bless you. Bye.
All right. Thank you.